All right, let's dive into something pretty fascinating, maybe even a bit unnerving. You sent us all those audio excerpts all about seduction.
Yeah, and one thing that really jumps out is how these sources see seduction not as some like quick trick, but like a whole process, a process that, plays out over time.
Huh, interesting. So not just like one big gesture, more like a strategy.
Exactly, yeah.
Uh,
And it's like understanding how they think, the person you're into,
yeah.
what they want, what they're maybe a little vulnerable to.
Okay, so how would someone go about building a strategy like that?
Well, the sources all seem to agree that the first step is picking the right person. It's not just about who you find attractive, it's about finding someone who's, well, susceptible.
Susceptible. Like there's a certain type of person who's more, I don't know, seducible.
That's what the sources suggest. For instance, someone who's already super content, leading a really fulfilling life, they're actually harder to seduce. They don't have that void.
Makes sense. If someone's already happy, why would they be looking for something else? Right.
Exactly. And these sources, they actually use historical examples. Casanova, remember him? The infamous
Oh,
seducer.
yeah, of course.
Well, he often went for like younger women, women who were having a rough time, maybe going through some misfortune. He'd be their savior, offer them comfort.
So he was using their vulnerability, kind of, I don't know, a bit manipulative.
Well, yeah, ethically it's definitely questionable, but if you just look at strategy, it worked. And they also talk about how important it is to create this sense of security, but at the same time, stir up some desire. It's a balance.
Okay, how do you do both? Make someone feel safe and desired,
Well,
especially if you're taking it slow, like we talked about.
one of the sources actually says, don't be too direct, don't come on too strong. Instead, they say haunt the periphery.
On the periphery.
Yeah, it's like using other people to, drop hints about you or,
Yeah.
or orchestrating these chance encounters, make it look natural.
Oh, sneaky. It's like piquing their interest without them even realizing it.
Right. And it makes them think they're the ones making the first move, makes them feel more in control.
Hmm, clever. But that must take so much planning, so much, I don't know, foresight.
It does, yeah. There's this great example. They talk about the Duc de Richelieu. He was a master back in his
A
day.
master seducer.
Oh, yeah. He was known for befriending like the friends of his targets. Drop in little stories, hints about himself, real long game.
Wow. Building up his reputation before even meeting them.
Exactly. Creating this aura, And that actually ties into another big principle, triangles.
Triangles, I don't follow.
Okay, it's like this. You create this illusion that you're desirable by making it look like other people want you.
Ah, like competition.
Right. Surround yourself with admirers. Doesn't even matter if they're just friends. It makes you seem, valuable.
Oh, I get it. People want what they can't have.
Exactly. And, they even use historical figures for this. Pauline Bonaparte, Napoleon's sister, always had tons of men around her.
So it's not just about your charm, it's about the context, making you look even more charming.
Exactly. It's all about that social proof, right?
It does make you wonder, though, are we all just, like, playing this game, being influenced all the time without even knowing it?
That's a good question. A really good question. But maybe we should hold off on the philosophy for now.
Yeah, fair enough.
How about we look at some more of these, specific tactics, the ones these sources talk about?
Okay, let's hear them. What else do they got?
Well, this one, it made me a little uncomfortable. The idea of, making the person a little anxious, planting little seeds of discontent.
Oh, okay. Getting a little dark now, aren't we?
Yeah, maybe a bit. But their argument is a person who's like totally content, hard to seduce. You got to highlight their insecurities, their boredom, their unfulfilled dreams.
Isn't that like taking advantage?
It can be, yeah. But they stress being subtle. It's insinuation, not like being openly negative. Just little hints, making them question things.
So make them feel like something's missing without them knowing why.
Exactly. And they use Cleopatra as an example. They say she used to like casually bring up Alexander the Great around Julius Caesar.
To make him feel inadequate.
That's the idea, yeah. It just shows you even normal conversations can be used to, play with someone's emotions.
Wow. Okay, so we've got choosing the right person, creating this aura, and then subtly making them feel like something's missing. What else?
This next one might surprise you. They talk about mirroring.
Mirroring. What, like literally?
Well, not exactly. It's more about becoming like a reflection, of the person you want to seduce. You adapt to their mood, their tastes, their opinions.
Isn't that a bit, I don't know, dishonest. Like, you're not being yourself.
Yeah, that's a good point. But the sources, they say it works because it feeds their ego, it makes them feel understood, so they're drawn to you.
So you're creating like a connection, a safe space.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah. And that lets you, bypass their logic, their rational mind, and go straight for the emotions.
Okay, I can see that. But wouldn't you risk, seeming fake
Yeah.
if you're not careful?
You would, definitely. That's why they say be subtle. It's not about copying everything they do. It's about finding those points of connection.
Right, those little things that make them feel like you get them.
That's it. Okay, so we've got the right person, the right image, the right hints, and now mirroring.
No.
What's next in this seduction playbook? Well, next they talk about temptation. Really appealing to their deepest desires, offering them something they can't resist.
Oh, now we're getting to the good stuff.
Right. They argue everyone has weaknesses. Could be greed, vanity, boredom. You got to find those weaknesses and use them.
They'll figure out what makes them tick and then use that to your advantage.
Exactly. And they even talk about using taboos, you know, offering something forbidden, something dangerous.
Like a forbidden romance.
That's a good example. They talk about Don Juan, the legendary seducer. He always played up the exotic, the different. He highlighted how boring their everyday life was.
So it's about making your offer seem more exciting compared to their normal life.
That's it. It's all about tapping into their fantasies, giving them a glimpse of a world where, their deepest desires can come true.
It sounds like we're moving from, subtle influence to something a little more deliberate.
It is a fine line, and these sources, they definitely don't shy away from that. They talk about this next phase. They call it leading astray. It's about making them the target. I mean, really attached to you, almost dependent emotionally.
Okay, now that's where I start to get a little uneasy. What do they suggest exactly?
Well, it's described as like a calculated disorientation. Keep them off balance with surprises, changes of plans, even, isolating them from their friends, their family, their routine. They're in your world now.
They actually mention taking the person on a trip. Is that part of it, that physical distance?
Exactly. It's like that Cleopatra example, remember? She took Caesar down the Nile, away from all his advisors, everything familiar. New environment, they're more open to suggestion.
Interesting. So it's all about shaking things up, making them question their reality.
Hmm.
And then you're there to offer them what? Comfort.
Right. And, they go even further. They talk about this demonic power of words, seductive language, they say. It's not about, honest expression. It's about crafting an effect.
So you're saying it's calculated, this way of talking.
Exactly. They actually compare it to music. Think
Okay.
about it. Noise, right? It's jarring. We block it out. But music, even if you've never heard it before, it can slip past your defenses. Seductive language, it's the same.
So you're bypassing logic, going straight for the emotions through the way you talk.
You got it. Crafting these words, these phrases that get a reaction, whether or not they're, true, is almost beside the point. It's a powerful tool.
Makes you think, doesn't it? Are we all being seduced all the time? By ads, by, I don't know, the media?
Could be. But hey, on a more positive note, they also talk about the importance of details. It's not just these big manipulative tactics, right? The small stuff matters too.
What kind of small stuff?
Thoughtful gifts, the way you dress, really paying attention to what they like, what they need. It's about creating an experience.
Making them feel like they're the only one you care about?
That's it. Like they talk about Pamela Churchill Harriman. She knew how to charm powerful men.
How'd you do it?
Details. She was
Okay.
a master of it, making every man feel like he was, special.
Which makes sense. Everyone wants to feel special.
Yeah.
Seen. Understood.
Absolutely. And then they go on to this other tactic, seems kind of contradictory, strategic weakness.
Strategic weakness. What's that?
Okay, it's like, disarming someone by showing a weakness, playing the victim, confessing something, maybe even making something up just to get their sympathy.
So instead of being strong, you're being weak.
Right, yeah. Sounds weird, but they say it works. Josephine, Napoleon's wife, she used to cry strategically to get her way.
Tears.
Really? Yeah. It plays on our, instincts. We want to comfort people, make them feel better, and suddenly they're the strong one.
Huh. So you disarm them with your own vulnerability. I'm starting to see how all these pieces fit together.
It is. It's like a web, right? And, they say the best seducers, they really understand human nature. They know how to predict what someone's going to do.
Okay, so we've talked about, recognizing it, doing it, but what happens after? If the seduction, works. Is that it? Or is there more?
That's where it gets really interesting, I think. Because once you've, won them over, the hard part starts, keeping up the illusion.
Right, because eventually the act has to drop.
Exactly. That initial, excitement fades and the real you starts to show. So the seducer has to get even better, keep that fantasy going.
So it's not enough to win. You got to keep winning.
That you got to adapt, change with them if you want to keep them.
It sounds exhausting.
It can be, yeah.
Yeah.
But for some people, it's worth it, because it's not just about the affection, it's about the power.
That's a bit dark, isn't it? I mean, can you even have a real connection with someone if you're always manipulating them? Big question, right? And these sources, they don't really give a clear answer, but they do suggest that sometimes even a calculated seduction can lead to real feelings.
So you can fall in love with the act, the illusion.
It happens. And in a way, that's the ultimate win.
Yeah.
You're not only won their heart, you've convinced them to love something that's, well, not entirely real.
Wow. That's a lot to think about. I mean, if it's all an illusion, can it ever, really last? Can it lead to happiness? Another good question. And I think, each person has to answer that for themselves. But it's worth remembering, even the best illusions, eventually they fade. And when that happens, it can be messy.
High stakes, high reward, lots of potential for disaster.
Exactly. But some people, they thrive on that risk.
Well, this has been a lot.
It has, yeah. But I think, understanding all this, it helps us, in our relationships, romantic or not.
Right. Because once you see the game, you can, I don't know, play it better or not play at all.
Exactly. You're more aware.
Okay. That makes me feel a little better. So we've covered defense, offense. What about like the end game? What do they say about that?
They talk a lot about momentum, keep things moving, lead the person you're seducing towards a point where there's no turning back.
That ties back to the isolation thing, right?
Yeah.
If they're already feeling uncertain, they're more likely to cling to you.
Exactly. And that's when you offer them, what they need, that comfort, that affection. But it's also about surprise. Keep them guessing.
It's like leading them on a chase. That can be pretty powerful.
Right. They talk about this calculated spontaneity, sudden changes. Keep them on their toes emotionally.
So isolation, momentum, surprise. What else is in this grand finale?
They talk about using language, but in a specific way, creating a mood, something that feels special, not just physical.
So it's more than just attraction. It's like you're creating an experience, something bigger.
Yeah, exactly. Like they talk about using, aesthetics, rituals, the setting even. Make it an event.
A romantic dinner, a walk in the moonlight.
That's the idea. Make it memorable, something they'll remember.
You're hitting them with everything then. Senses, emotions, their mind. It's a lot.
It is, yeah, and it all leads to one thing. Surrender.
Ah, the moment of truth. But even in surrender, there's still control, right? You're the one orchestrating it all.
Absolutely. They were very clear about that. The seducer is always in control, even when it seems like they're letting go.
So even when it's, passionate, there's this cold, calculating part.
That's what makes it so interesting, don't you think? This mix of passion and calculation, vulnerability and control.
It's like chess. You're thinking several moves ahead.
And the prize is, well, their heart, their mind.
Okay, that's a little creepy.
Yeah.
But it also makes me wonder if it's all about manipulation. Is it ever, ethical?
That's the question, isn't it? But even the best seducer can't force someone to do something they don't want to do.
So there's always a choice.
There is, yeah. And that's what makes it interesting, because it's not just about getting what you want. It's about creating something, a connection, something that goes beyond just the physical.
Well, it's not just about winning. It's about building something.
Exactly. That's what separates the real masters from the amateurs.
Okay, that's actually kind of a nice thought.
Yeah.
But it makes me wonder, if it's about a real connection, can it be one-sided? Can you really seduce someone if they're not, in a way, seducing you back?
That's a great question. Really great. And you know what? I think we need more time to explore that.
Oh, come on. You can't leave us hanging like that.
I know. But sometimes the best questions are the ones that, stay with you, the ones you keep thinking about.
Okay, fine. You win.
Yeah.
But you've definitely given us a lot to think about.
I'm glad. And I can't wait to hear what you take away from all this.
Yeah?
From these sources.
Okay, so we're back. And I got to say, this whole deep dive into seduction, it's really gotten under my skin. Like there's this whole world, just below the surface of everything.
It is pretty fascinating, right? And, going through all these sources, it really hits you. Seduction, it's not what people think. It's not just about smooth talking or grand gestures. It's almost like a science, you know?
Yeah, and it makes you think, like with all the messages we get all the time, how do you even know if you're being seduced?
That's the big question, right? And I don't know if there's a surefire answer. But one of the sources, they say to look at the details. Those little things where someone's like tailoring things to you, like they're creating this custom experience.
Right, like they're showering you with compliments, but they're the exact compliments that get to your insecurities.
Yeah.
Or they suggest something you've always wanted to do but never gotten around to.
Exactly. They're making you feel special, like seen. And that can be genuine, right? But it can also be, a way to make you feel like you owe them something.
So you got to ask yourself, why are they trying so hard?
Right. And also, how does it make you feel? Do you feel, cared for? Or is there this little voice saying something's not quite right?
That gut feeling. It's important.
Oh, yeah. If something feels off, even if you can't explain why, pay attention.
Good advice. So we've talked about recognizing it, but what about if you're, the one doing the seducing? What do these sources say about that?
Well, one thing they suggest is disarming through weakness.
Disarming through weakness. What does that even mean?
It's like, playing the victim or letting them see a flaw, something you're insecure about, so they trust you.
But wouldn't you want to seem, strong, confident?
You'd think so, right. But they say showing vulnerability, it actually works. Because suddenly, they're the strong one. They want to protect you.
Huh. You're using their instincts against them almost?
Yeah. And once their guard is down, way easier to influence them.
Wow. I'm seeing how all these pieces, they fit together. Like it's a strategy.
It is. And they say, the real experts, they get people, they can predict what someone's going to do.
So we've covered defense, offense. What about what happens after when the seduction, works?
That's when things get even more interesting because now you got to keep up the act.
Right, because eventually the real you comes out.
Exactly. All that initial excitement, it fades. So the seducer, they got to get even better.
Yeah.
Keep that fantasy going.
So it never ends.
Well, in a way, no. You got to keep adapting if you want to keep them.
Sounds like a lot of work.
It can be, yeah. But for some people, that's the reward, It's not just about the affection. It's about the power you have over them.
That's a little, I don't know. Doesn't that kind of ruin the whole connection thing if you're always, manipulating?
Good point. And to be honest, the sources don't really give a clear answer. But they do say sometimes, even when it starts out calculated, real feelings can develop.
So you can fall in love with the act?
Happens. And for seducer, that's like the ultimate victory, right? They've convinced you to love something that's, well, not totally real.
It's a little scary when you think about it like that. I mean, can that kind of love, can it last? Can it really make you happy?
Another big question. And honestly, I think that's up to each person to decide. But gotta remember, even the best illusions, they don't last forever. And when they break, it hurts.
Yeah. High risk, high reward, high chance of heartbreak.
That's one way to put it. But some people, they like that danger.
Well, this has been a lot to process, honestly.
It has, yeah. But hopefully, going through all this, it makes us, a little wiser, a little more aware.
I hope so.
Mhm.
So we can, spot it when it's happening to us, maybe.
Exactly. Knowledge is power, right?
Right. Well, on that note, I think that's about all we have time for today.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to wrap things up.
Well, thanks for joining us for this this deep dive. We went pretty deep, I think. And hopefully you learned something or at least, started thinking about things a little differently.
And remember, there are people out there playing these games, whether they realize it or not. But now, you know the signs. Maybe even use some of this stuff, to your advantage sometimes.
Just don't forget to be yourself, all right?
Absolutely. And trust your gut.
Until next time.